Hey guys, welcome back to Any Narrates. Thank you very much for joining us for today's story. The title goes like this. Aunt corners me on the night of 21st birthday and admits that she's ashamed about her actions from 21 years ago and leaves me with the letter and the truth. I drive to mom's and demand answers. Hi, it has been a few days since this happened, and I still feel like I can't process the whole thing. My mind is just clouded with thoughts and I feel so overwhelmed. I haven't been able to focus on anything since that night, so I just need some sort of place to vent out about how I feel right now. I'm 21 female, I'm a college student. Currently in my final year of college, and I work part-time as a waitress to earn some extra cash. I live on campus and have been staying away from home ever since I started college 3 years ago. I am still extremely close to my family, especially my mother, and I try to visit them at least a couple times a month. They're about a 3-hour drive away and always make it a point to visit during holidays, birthdays, and other family celebrations. I am an only child, and my parents had me when they were in their 30s, so I grew up very quote-unquote comfortably. By that, I mean that both my parents were working, we had a nice house, I went to a good school, and basically all my needs were met. I am forever grateful to my parents because they made me who I am, especially my mother. She's one of my best friends. She's my rock, and she is also the best mother I could have ever asked for. She would ensure that no matter how busy she was, she'd make sure that she was the one who would tuck me in at night and wake me up in the morning. She'd also pack me tasty lunches with cute notes telling me how much she loved me. She'd come to all my recitals and shows and cheer me on at all my games. As I grew up, we'd go to movies together, to the park, and even to the swimming pool during summer. One of my favorite things to do as a kid was to have a girls' day with my mom. Once in a while, when she got off work early, she would take me out of school early as well, and we'd go to the salon to get our nails done and our hair blow-dried, and we'd always go to get ice cream later. She would host the most amazing sleepovers with all my friends and throw the most elaborate birthday parties for me. She would always ensure that she made the cake. It was her special recipe. I love her with all my heart. I could talk to her about anything, from boys to my friends, to what I wanted to study and which college to go to, and she would give me the best advice. Staying on campus for the past few years made me realize just how much she did for me and how much I miss her and owe her. One evening, a couple of months ago, I longed to go home. It was around Thanksgiving time, and I missed being in the festive atmosphere. I was planning to go home for the holidays anyway, but I just couldn't wait and decided to go home a day early and surprise my parents. I didn't tell them that I was coming over because, like I said, I wanted it to be a surprise. Instead, when I pulled up, I was the surprised one. My mother was having a full-blown argument with her younger sister, my aunt, and both of them seemed to be on the verge of tears. They did not even realize that I had entered the house. I was too shocked to say anything. My mom saw me after a second, and her whole composure changed. My aunt looked horrified to see me there, and they immediately wiped away their tears, ran to give me hugs, and basically acted like nothing weird happened. But something was definitely not right. My mom rarely cries. The only time I ever saw her break down was at my grandmother's funeral. She always put on a brave front, and it took a lot for her to shed a tear. I had never, to this date, seen her in such a state before. And why was she yelling at my aunt? Why was my aunt here in the first place? These questions were buzzing in my head. I allowed myself to get escorted by my mother to the dining room, while she busied herself with dinner, saying that she had no idea that I was coming or else that she would have made one of my favorite dishes. My aunt, on the other hand, sat with me at the dining table. She still had that scared look on her face, and I had no idea why. She also looked a little different than I remembered. My aunt, 45 female, is around 10 years younger than my mother. Growing up, I'd always wanted to be like her. She had stunning long jet black hair and wore the most fashionable clothes. I would literally beg my mom to let me buy clothes like that so that I could look like her. She lived in another city, so we got to see her a few times a year, and I used to look forward to her visits all the time. She'd always get me a souvenir from the various places that she traveled to throughout the year and tell me stories about the people that she'd met and the things that she'd learned during her travels. At the time, I admired her and wanted to be just like her. She was so different from my mother, who, on the flip side, was extremely hardworking and family-oriented, while my aunt loved exploring and traveling. She went in and out of relationships like it meant nothing, and she definitely didn't have time for a family. My mother didn't really approve of my aunt's actions, and she didn't want me to get too influenced by her lifestyle, especially her drinking habit. This was no secret. My aunt did have a drinking problem, and my mother used to tell me how she used to turn up at our house completely drunk out of her mind when she was a teenager and beg my mom to let her stay there for the night so that she could sober up before going to my grandmother's house. For as long as I could remember, my mother drummed it into my head about the disadvantages of drinking and how I'd end up like my aunt if I drank. I still thought that my aunt was the coolest. She was always fun to be around. But seeing her now, she was almost unrecognizable. She had lost a significant amount of weight, which made her look weak and fragile, and her gorgeous, luscious hair that I envied seemed to be thinning out. I didn't want to ask any questions at the moment. I felt like I had already done enough damage for one night with my unannounced arrival and decided to just enjoy myself being back home with my family, celebrate Thanksgiving, and ask questions later. The next morning, I asked Mom what the whole situation was. She kinda just brushed it off, but I kept pressing. She then told me that my aunt was staying over for Thanksgiving and that she had borrowed money from my mom a couple of months ago and hadn't repaid it yet, and that's what they were brawling about. I knew that she wasn't telling me the whole truth, but talking about my aunt just seemed to upset Mom, so I changed the subject. Thanksgiving is a big affair at home. We call over all our friends and family, and Dad roasts a massive turkey every single year. That's his thing. Since a lot of people were coming over this year as well, we began prepping for dinner. That's when I noticed that both my mother and aunt were acting very strange. My aunt kept trying to make conversation with me, and my mother would just keep interrupting. She never gave us a chance to be alone together and made sure that someone was in the room with us at all times. My aunt called me over and asked me to go out with her for a walk, but my mother immediately gave me some work to do. Thanksgiving went on great, but I couldn't help noticing this strange energy between my mother and aunt. I could tell that my aunt wanted to speak with me, but my mother never allowed us to interact for more than a few minutes at most. After Thanksgiving break, I went back to college and everything went back to normal. I completely forgot about the whole tension with my mother and aunt because I had exams and I couldn't focus on anything else. I was also looking forward to a huge milestone a few days after my exam, my 21st birthday. My friends had planned this huge celebration for me at the restaurant where I worked. This party also acted as a post-exam stress buster, so we were expecting a lot of people to show up, and I was so excited. Mom and I had gone shopping, I had a super cute outfit, and my boyfriend even gave me a very sentimental gift the morning of my birthday. I usually celebrated most of my birthdays with my family, but since this was my 21st birthday, I did want to take my first sip of alcohol, and I knew Mom would disapprove, so I told her that I would celebrate with my friends this time, and we'd celebrate again when I got home for Christmas. The party was amazing, and all of us were having a blast. Amid everything, I was stunned to see my aunt walked in. She still had that weak and tired look about her, but I was pleasantly surprised to see her and dragged her to meet my friends. She interacted with all of them, but I could tell something was bothering her. I know my mother disapproved of alcohol, but my aunt surely didn't, so I ordered some shots for all of us, and just when I was about to drink mine, my aunt literally pushed the glass out of my hands and it shattered on the floor. I honestly didn't know what to make of this. I had never seen her act like this. Before I could say anything, she pulled me out of the restaurant and led me to a bus stand at the side of the road. I was so confused. We just sat there in silence for a few minutes. It looked like she was trying to say something, but couldn't find the right words. Finally, She said that she never wanted to do this, but she had no option, and she had handed me a letter but told me not to read it right now. She then said that she was sorry for everything and that she was extremely embarrassed for what she did in the past. She was young and foolish and didn't know what she was doing. The more she spoke, the more confused I got. Finally, she asked me to just think about it. She almost pleaded with me. I had no idea what she was talking about, but she said that the letter would explain everything. She hugged me and left, while I just sat there for a moment. I then decided to read the letter, and that's when everything changed. I don't even know how to say this. The letter started off pretty simple. My aunt spoke about how she was a wild child, how she kept drinking and making a lot of quote-unquote mistakes when she was younger, and how my mother would always help her out. She said that when she was 24 years old, she found out that she was pregnant, and she was not sure about what to do. But she did know that she didn't want the baby. She was terrified to tell my grandmother, so instead she ran to my mother, who was absolutely furious at her because she knew that my aunt could not handle this responsibility. That's when it hit her. The solution to this mess: my parents. They had been trying to conceive for years now, but with no luck, and they weren't getting any younger. They were well settled in life, had well-paying jobs and a house, and most importantly, they were responsible enough to handle a baby. She asked my parents if they could raise the baby, and they completely denied it, especially my father. But then, after weighing out their options, they realized that this might be the only way that they could have a baby, without the expense that came with the fertility treatments and adoption. Plus, the baby would still be biologically related to the family in some way and would still have the same maternal grandparents. Moreover, my parents really did want the child, and after much thought and debate, agreed to raise the child as their own. And that child was me. It felt like my whole world was crumbling before my eyes. I had to reread that sentence hundreds of times, but it still didn't make sense to me. My whole life was a lie, and I had no idea. The letter continued, saying that at the time, my aunt was relieved that my parents had agreed to raise her baby, but now she felt extremely ashamed for her actions. She was a grown woman. She could have made changes in her life and taken on the responsibility of a child, but she wanted the easy way out, and my parents were the scapegoat. She was immature and irresponsible and didn't feel like changing for a baby. But as years passed, she began to regret her decision. She saw me grow up into this wonderful child, and she kept wondering if it would have been the same if she had raised me. She wondered if motherhood was for her, and she regretted the fact that she was missing my life. But she knew that she couldn't get too attached, and that's why she started visiting less. That's when she started drinking. It became an addiction, and she couldn't go a day without it. She didn't have a partner or a child. She had no responsibility. Drinking was a comfort to her, and she'd been doing so since she was a teenager. Around 3 months ago, she fell ill. She had severe pain in her abdomen and nausea. She went to the ER, and they diagnosed her with liver cirrhosis, which was due to her chronic drinking problem. Her liver was so badly damaged, there was barely any viable tissue left, and the only thing that could save her was a liver transplant. She was put on the waiting list, but there was no guarantee that she would get a liver in time, and that's when she remembered that the both of us had the same blood group. She said that I might not be a match, but the fact that we had the same blood group meant that there was a higher chance that I was. I just had to do a few tests to confirm it. She said that she knew that she was asking for a lot and I didn't deserve this, but she requested that I get my test done to see if I was a match. The rest was up to me. She once again said that she was sorry for putting me through this and that my mother would be furious that she told me like this. But I was her only option, and there was nothing else she could do. I couldn't believe what I had just read. Nothing seemed real to me anymore. The person I thought was my mother this whole time was actually my aunt, and my real mother, who I thought was my aunt, was dying and was asking for my liver. I couldn't process anything, so I decided to drive home. I needed to speak with my mother. I needed to hear her say it with her own mouth. I reached home, and it was already past midnight by now. My parents were startled to see me, but when I showed them the letter, they didn't know what to say. I begged them to tell me that this wasn't true, that this was some big prank. But one look at my dad's face, and I knew this was no joke. I stormed out of there. I'm back on campus now, but this has completely consumed me. I stopped going to class, and my parents keep calling me, but right now I need some space. I feel conflicted about everything. I don't know what to believe. As for my aunt, I don't know if I want to do the test. I don't know if I want to give her my liver if we are a match. Am I overreacting to the situation? What do I do? Hi, it's been a very tough week since I last posted. A lot has happened, and I thought I'd get on here to update you. My parents came over a few days ago, and I could tell that they had been hurting. The thing is, I don't know what to feel right now. Yes, my parents did keep this huge secret from me, and I am so angry at them for this. But at the same time, I feel like I'm being unfair to them. My aunt could have dropped me in an orphanage somewhere, and who knows where I'd be right now. Instead, they took on the responsibility and treated me like their own kid, gave me all the love and everything that I needed. I never felt neglected under their care, and even though I'm not their daughter, they will always be my parents. Nothing can change that. But it doesn't change the fact that I feel betrayed. My whole life has literally been a lie, and I just need time to process this. It's a huge change. I hugged my parents, and we all couldn't help but cry. My dad told me that they always saw me as their kid, and that I was a blessing that they never thought they would get. My mother apologized and said that it was never their intention to hurt me in any way. She was completely blindsided by my aunt's diagnosis. My aunt wanted me to tell me as soon as she got diagnosed, but my mother knew that it would absolutely shatter me. She was furious at my aunt for telling me everything the way that she did. In fact, she pleaded with my aunt to tell me that she needed a transplant without telling me about the fact that she was my mother. But my aunt was hell-bent on telling me everything. I haven't spoken to my aunt since the night of my birthday. I've tried to call her a couple of times, but she never picks up. I'm still so conflicted. I know she gave birth to me, but she is in no way my mother. She didn't care about me this whole time, and now she's behind me only because she needs something from me. She never wanted me otherwise, but I still love her. She is family. I just don't know if I should do the test. My mother is completely against it. She says that since my aunt is on the waiting list, she's bound to get a liver soon and that I shouldn't get guilt-tripped into doing anything at the moment. She also blames my aunt for everything. She got sick because of her chronic drinking, and even though my mom did everything to help her, my aunt never changed, and now she's facing the consequences of her irresponsibility. My mother doesn't want me to go through trauma just because of my aunt's actions, but I can tell that she's hurt. I haven't made a decision yet. I need to talk to my aunt in person before I do anything, but I think I will do the test. If I'm not a match, this whole debate will end. Hello, it's been 2 weeks since the last update, but I have some bad news. My aunt has now been admitted to the hospital. Her condition worsened a week ago, and she needed serious medical attention. She's stable right now, but will not last long unless she gets a transplant. I spoke to her a few days before she got admitted. I could tell that she wasn't doing good. Her face was yellowed, she was balding, and she had lost even more weight by now. I couldn't bear to see her like this. Once again, she apologized for what she did. The same old story of her being too young and immature. She said that if she had the chance, she would go back and change everything and raise me herself. I told her that I was glad that she chose my parents. It was the best decision that she could have made for me. They raised me to be the person that I am today, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I told her that I was sorry that she regrets her decision now, and I know that the only reason she told me everything was because she needed me. The whole time she pushed me away, but now she needed me. I told her that my parents had taught me to be selfless, and even though she was just my aunt, my mother loved me, and I did too. I knew my mother was hurting, but she would never willingly ask me to do this, even though I knew she wanted me to. So this was the only reason I was doing this. I was going to get tested only for my mother. I didn't want her to lose a sister. My aunt was speechless, but I could tell that she was grateful. The next day I got tested, And turns out I was a match. I learned that in a liver transplant, only a part of the liver is taken from the donor, and after a few months, the liver regenerates back to its original size. I would have to be hospitalized for about a week after surgery, and I will be needing bed rest for about 2 months post-transplant. Now that I know I'm a match, after a lot of thought and consideration, I've decided to go ahead with the transplant. I would not be able to live with myself if something happened to my aunt while I could have done something to help her. I just can't have that on my conscience. It's going to be a long recovery period. I have to adjust my classes and do it online for a bit. I'd also have to take a hiatus from work, but it doesn't look like my aunt has much time left, and this needs to be done as soon as possible. I would be lying if I said I wasn't scared. I'm terrified, but I'm gonna have my mom by my side the whole time, and I just want this whole ordeal to be over. I'll keep you all updated. Quick update. The surgery is taking place tomorrow. I have been in the hospital for a couple of days now, and I am constantly being monitored to make sure everything is fine. My boyfriend and parents are here, so that's calming me down a little, but I'm just so nervous for both of us. My aunt is okay for now, but I know she's extremely nervous about this too. Thank you for all of your gracious thoughts and prayers. I would appreciate some extra prayers tomorrow especially. Please pray that both surgeries go well. I'm going to try to get some sleep for now. Hello everybody, I'm alive, and so is my aunt. The surgery went off well for both of us. It's been exactly a month post-surgery. I'm doing okay. I'm on a special diet, which sucks, but apart from that, I'm doing great. I can walk around a bit more, but the doctor has advised me to rest for at least another month. My aunt is doing much better. She has a longer recovery time than me, but it looks like she's going to be just fine. She promises that she's never going to drink again and will take all the steps to recover from her addiction. My parents have not left my side. I'm currently at home, and I feel like our relationship has only gotten stronger. Yes, I've still not completely processed this whole thing, but I feel like I could never see anyone else as my parents and vice versa. I've helped my aunt, and she now has a clean slate to start over. I don't have a clear conscience. I want to thank all of you for your advice, support, and prayers. Thank you. Now, I'm looking forward to graduation in a few months. Alright guys, and that was a wrap up for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Go ahead and smash the like button for me, and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again, we will be seeing you in the next one.